I'm going to call the October 10th meeting of the Hays City Commission to order. Next item on the agenda are consider approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held on September 26, 2019. Are there any changes?
No changes.
None.
Hearing none, it's approved as presented. I want to welcome all of you to Commission Chambers tonight and all of you at home. We appreciate your interest in city government, and informed citizens are very powerful. This is your part of the agenda. If you would like to address us on a non-agenda item, I don't think they do. You're welcome to come forward now. They're all on the agenda. So we'll move on to employee promotions and new hires. Please come forward.
Good evening, Don Scheibler, Chief of Police for the Hays Police Department. Tonight's my pleasure to announce that Evan Cron has been promoted to the rank of Patrol Corporal. I should also point out tonight is Evan's birthday. He's very excited about being here with me at the commission.
I feel it.
I also want to make you aware that his wife, Rachel Cron, has joined us here tonight, too. So, Evan came to us as a part-time police officer in 2013. He was going to school at Fort Hays State University, came to work for us part-time. Within a year, or half a year, six months, he was promoted to a full-time position. Last year, he became a master police officer with us. Evan just continued to do outstanding work for us. He's involved in many different areas of the police department, the bike patrol, the Evans Vault custodian. He assists with the peer support team. He's CIT trained. But where Evan really excels at is with the field training officer program. He's also a field training officer. Those new applicants that come in there, he's able to guide them, train them, mentor them, and he's done some really great work. And I think that will be beneficial to him as he becomes a supervisor within the department. So we're very proud of Evan. I'd like to again introduce Evan Cron, Corporal with the Hays Police Department.
Congratulations. And thank you to his wife, Rachel. Thank you. I know that's a difficult thing to watch him walk out the door every day, and we appreciate you, too. Thank you.
Corporal, on your birthday. If I'd known, we got you cake.
Happy birthday.
Good evening, Jesse Rohr, Director of Public Works, and I want to introduce tonight Travis Cassidy. Travis joined the Service Division of Public Works recently as Maintenance Worker 1. Travis comes to us with a variety of backgrounds, including most recently a pastor. He was also in the past a foreman for a tree trimming crew with Westar Energy, and construction background as well. Travis, to this point, has fit right in. He started with us September 23rd, and been a welcome part of our team at Public Works, and we're grateful to have him. So,
Welcome.
Thank you for taking time to join us tonight. I appreciate
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Please go, enjoy your evening.
Yeah.
There's no items on the consent agenda or unfinished business. We move on to new business. Chitola Creek Water Reclamation and Reuse Facility, completed project.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, Jeff Chrisman, Director of Water Resources. It's my pleasure tonight to kind of start off the process of introducing the final completion for our project. I do want to thank you all that attended today. I appreciate you being there. It was a nice event. And I will do a quick introduction, and then if they come up and speak, they'll introduce themselves as well, too. But in the back with me is Jason Regal, our wastewater superintendent. In the front row, HDR Engineers was our owner's rep, Stan and Eric, Stan Christopher and Eric Farrow. And then Burns & McDonnell, Jeff Keller with Burns & McDonnell's here tonight. And then Travis Stryker with CAS Constructors. So I will have Stan come up and he will start us off.
Well, congratulations. This might be the last time you hear me make a formal presentation.
We want you to come back monthly and tell us how you're doing.
All right, I'll come. So, we had an exciting day today, and we do want to kind of give you an update and just a very brief virtual tour of the facility. My name is Stan Christopher with HDR. Actually, this project, if you probably all remember, started in the fall of 2015 when you all decided to proceed with the project and decided to go design build. HDR joined you in April of 2015 as the owner's rep, helped you through the process of facility planning, worked with Kim on the SRF loan, and supported the rate study, and then helped with the procurement of design builders. Burns & McDonald came and CAS came on board in 2017, in the spring of 2017, and their notice to proceed to start was on May 31st of 2017. So we're here today to really celebrate the final completion of the project, which was officially completed on September 15th. Between May 21st and 2017, as you probably heard today, there were multiple milestones that we needed to hit because you have to operate the existing plant while you're building a new plant. And so that structure required the contractor and the design engineer, the city staff, to really work together and coordinate so that this thing could be pulled off without a hitch. There was no acceptable failure to deliver treated wastewater to meet your discharge limits at any point during this project, and so that was accomplished. The key deadlines related to that was the liquid treatment, and you'll see a little bit more, and I think you probably all have heard what the liquid treatment is comprised of, was actually completed in January of 2019. So we were able to then retire the liquid part of the existing plant and start retrofitting some of those structures, and even removing some of those structures so that they could construct the biosolids part of the plant. The biosolids treatment facilities were completed on May 31st, 2019, and the overall project was established substantially complete on June 3rd, 2019. The contract date for that substantial completion was August 1st, 2019. So substantial completion is essentially the project is complete to the level that the city can take over operation for its intended use. There is not everything, not 100% of the items on that project are completed, but anything critical to the operation was completed, and Burns & McDonald CAS joint venture completed that almost 2 months ahead of schedule. Final completion, then, and I give a lot of credit to Toby, Jeff, Jason, in sticking with the whole concept of if we're going to be complete on September 15th, we're going to be final complete. And so Burns & McDonald, CAS, worked with HDR and the city folks to get that to that level, and I'm happy to say there is no incomplete work at that point in time. There were no change orders on the project, so the project budget in the beginning is the project final price. The city does have a warranty on the treatment plant, and it's basically 1 year from the date that you reach substantial completion. So as long during that time period, anything that comes up that might fail, not work completely correctly after it's been operating for a while, you will have till January 10th of 2020 for the liquid treatment, the solids treatment till May 31st, and overall everything on the project site until June 3rd, 2020 that wasn't included in the other warranty period. So that's a good protection for you all. I just briefly want to introduce Eric. Eric was actually the on-site owner's engineer. Eric moved out here in the spring of 2017, lived out here and worked out at the treatment plant out of one of the existing buildings. He was the eyes and ears for HDR and really an extension of the city staff in reviewing submittals, reviewing pay applications, doing some inspection, communications between the parties, and I give Eric a lot of credit for the work he did to help everybody on this project to make it run smoothly.
All right, Stan, thanks for the introduction. And yes, I'm Eric Farrow with HDR Engineering. And I just have to say, first of all, it's been my pleasure working alongside you for the 2+ years that I've been stationed out here in Hayes. I moved back to the Kansas City area around the June timeframe this year. And it's good to be back. And instead of presenting updates of where all of these structures are, just show you the final product. It's been a nice collaborative effort between all parties, and it's been my pleasure to be a part of that. So I'm going to go through the structures here and show a quick time lapse of the facilities. First of all, you can see the aerial view here, kind of the before and after of the treatment plant. This was a trickling filter plant at one time before it was an activated sludge plant, which it remains today, just a new and improved activated sludge plant. So some of the notable structures or key differences in these aerials you'll see are these old trickling filters gone and replaced by a new aeration basin here. So to start things off, flow from the city's collection system goes into the influent pump station, and that flow is pumped up to the headworks facility where the screenings, the grit removal takes place, and it then can continue by gravity through the rest of the treatment processes. You'll see here that there were some improvements to things like the septage receiving station even. There are some beneficial uses of the treatment plant to the public, one of them being septage receiving here for off-site septage loads. Some things were installed along with that, including valve control and a washdown system. We don't have it in our slide deck tonight, but then you may also recall that there's a reuse filling station out at the plant also where contractors, county workers can come in and have beneficial use of the reuse water, the treated effluent from the plant. Nextly, you'll see the generator. This is a large generator located next to the headworks building and the electrical room there. It provides backup power generation to the critical process equipment at the plant should it lose power. And then to the headworks, there's a few photos here, one showing an aerial, one showing the screening equipment there in the middle, and then one showing the grit removal equipment at the bottom right. That's a 2-story structure there. This is, I think, one of the cool things that the city did to kind of showcase the project was provide, one, the aerial imagery that you see in the slides tonight, but also providing a webcam for the duration of the project, basically, that showed the progress that happened here at the headworks. So we have a quick time-lapse video that I'll try to briefly narrate showing the progress up there at the headworks. It started out with that influent pump station, which you may have noticed sets at grade, but the contractor here is installing a caisson construction where they are able to drop the nearly 35 feet into the ground where it operates today. The headworks begins. It's worth noting, I guess, that there was no time loss on the project and we worked in all weather conditions. So those brief flashes of white are the snow when we were pouring concrete, and among other things. So we're getting close with doors on the building, and then new site piping, HVAC. Then it'll move over to the new admin space here in just a moment and show some of the structures there too. Parking lot, main entrance there to the admin. So in the background there, you may have seen the aeration basin. So this is the single 185-foot diameter cyclic aeration basin that provides the BOD removal. That's the biochemical oxygen demand, and then the nutrient removal to the plant. It provides aeration along this bridge here via the diffusers, and then there's 4 additional mixer bridges there also that provides a complete mixed environment for that nutrient removal to take place. That aeration is provided by a new set of blowers shown here. And there's a number of structures shown in this aerial, but this aerial photo is to point out the 2 final clarifiers and then the splitter box. So these our new 70-foot diameter final clarifiers with effluent launder covers, and then there's some scum pump station that's installed along with that to treat that at the plant. Flow from the final clarifiers goes on to the disc filter where we have the tertiary disc filter. There's the new unit there shown on the right, and then there's additional space within this building here for a future unit should the city's flow demands require it. This filter removes some of the finer particles from the treated wastewater, and then it also helps to facilitate phosphorus removal, so increasing the nutrient removal of the and performance of the plant. Water from the filter building then, of course, is conveyed to disinfection. Here we have the ultraviolet disinfection system. It's a fully closed vessel type system, so it's very clean. We ate lunch in the space adjacent to this room today, so it was a very nice environment. And one of the big highlights for Jason, his staff, and the city really is being a chemical-free treatment process now. This ultraviolet allows us to achieve that, whereby we're using electricity instead of chemical to achieve that disinfection. And then from the disinfection, we can go out to Chitola Creek. And this was just an opportune time to take an aerial. Honestly, you'll see the plant outfall located here, and there were some improvements to the embankment around that outfall. This photo here was taken after a recent rain event rather, and you can see how clear the treated effluent coming from the treatment plant is compared to the suspended solids out there in Chitola. Okay, and then real quickly I'll touch on the reuse system and then some of the solids too. So first we have the effluent pumps that are located adjacent to the UV area where the effluent is pumped up to the reuse tank shown in the bottom right. We installed protective coatings to those basins to extend their life so that those tanks provide storage for water before it goes out to the golf course, for example, or other beneficial reuse in the city system. And from there, one of those off-site storage locations is going to be the golf course. So these golf course ponds existed prior to the project. We just expanded this one here on the westernmost side, and you can see some of the piping that was installed here also to improve some of the overtopping that was happening there at the golf course. So that provides additional water storage for the golf course should they need it during one of the hot haze summers. And then to touch on the solids treatment, solids are pumped from the final clarifiers over to the digesters here, where we converted the former aeration basins and reused those for this aerobic digester. These biosolids ultimately go out to land application. The installation included new pumps located here and then new blowers here also. So this was previously an aerated set of tanks and it remains so. We're just pumping higher solids concentration to them and continuing to use them. And then lastly, those solids end up here at the dewatering building where there's been a new centrifuge installed. And then you can get a glimpse in the bottom right there, the final product, that biosolids dried cake that the city then can land apply. And there's many beneficial reuses there too. It is a fertilizer for local farmers and used in other areas as well. And lastly, for me anyway, is the administration building and the laboratory here. So hopefully if you're out at the site today, you get to tour those new facilities if you hadn't seen them already. It includes a new entrance to the plant off General Custer Road, automatic gates there, parking lots, lab space, admin space, and control rooms. And that's where we'll cover the SCADA controls and talk a little bit about the improvements made there. So this is the brains to the plant. The SCADA provides on-site and remote operations for the plant. As you may know, the plant is staffed 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it is available for monitoring, say, from the provided tablet or even a mobile device to address things if alarms come up or we just want to check on the status of the plant. We're able to do that. And another maybe minor improvement, but it does improve communications with the systems integrator for this SCADA control and allows troubleshooting with the integrator if that's necessary. So far this has been running pretty smoothly. If I know that Jason likes to make adjustments on the fly sometimes just to prove that it works, and so far it has. All right, and to cover treatment performance, I'll let you want to make the transition, Stan. We'll talk about the treatment of the plant itself.
And I might add too, as you know, the city extended fiber optics from City Hall to the water plant, from the water plant to the wastewater plant, and from the wastewater plant back to City Hall. So you also have capabilities at the water plant to view the operation of the facility and make changes. There's somebody on duty there at a time when there's nobody at the plant. This is one of two slides that we're probably the most proud of. First of all, it kind of summarizes everything performance-wise that this plant has to meet based on your current permit, which was put in place on September 1st, 2019, your new current permit. Those limits are shown on here in the orange, and then the gray is limits that we anticipate through conversations with Kansas Department of Health and Environment will be future limits coming down the road. KDHE is working with EPA and doing TMDL evaluations and studies on the Kansas River, the Smoky Hill, and it reaches up to the discharge here from Hayes. And they've anticipated that in the future there will be much tighter nutrient limits. And we've been talking about that since we started, and I think you probably heard about it many years before that. So what you see on here then is the green bar is a summary of all the testing data that once we really got the plant into full operation and the weather had cleared up and everything was going, what the average, without really trying to performance test it, but the average parameters have been. And so you can see here clearly on BOD with the green bar that it's operated 25% of the limit on BOD, about 30% or less of the limit on TSS, the limit on nitrates and nitrite of 10 has been running about 1.4, so a little over, 14%. Ammonia is less than half, and phosphorus is right at the limit. And that's without really trying on the phosphorus. We got to the point where we really, or Jason and his crew, along with Burns McDonald, tried really hard during the performance test to really push the phosphorus system. And as you can see on there, during performance testing on the phosphorus, it was actually 0.167. And that's likely to be, no guarantees, but that's likely to be considerably below any future limit that you're going to see during the life of this plant. I mean, that's state-of-the-art numbers. And so you have the capability at this plant to manage it and optimize it and operate it efficiently towards the current limits, but then you also have the advantage that in the future you can crank it up and meet future limits. And I really don't know of any significant change that would have to be made to meet any of those limits. So I think you can be proud that this is going to give you a sustainable facility for many years to come. And then the second slide is that the cost summary is, like I said, there were no change orders. The design and construction of this project was $28 million. The facility planning and the owner's rep services was $1.5 million. During the SRF payout, where you were borrowing the money during construction and hadn't started paying debt service yet. There was $205,000 in debt in loan interest. And then part of the contract that was negotiated with the design builder was that there were damages if he did not complete the substantial completion in accordance with the contract date or the final completion within the contract date. But there was also early completion bonus that was included in there that would be available if he was able to put this plant in operation earlier than what the contract date was. And the idea was that there were many things contingent upon getting that thing running in the summer when you can start it up at the best and the most efficient way. Certainly, our services could be reduced by getting it done complete. And so the city realized many savings, and so this contract was set up for sharing that savings with the contractor. And as we mentioned earlier, he completed it 59 days early, and there's a $88,500 bonus. The total amount of this is $30 million, $272,000, which is pretty close to being right at the SRF loan amount. And so the financial part of this plant was very successful as well as the performance.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Keller with Burns & McDonnell. I'm here with Travis Stryker, CS Construction, and we represent the Design Build joint venture. So I just have a couple of slides here talking about the green solutions aspects of this project, and we just chose a few of them that are, more than token elements. They really provide substantial value to the project in a lot of ways. I just want to cover them very quickly here. First of all, when Eric was showing the original photo from 2017 of the treatment plant, he showed you those trickling filters, those big round filters. Those were filled with rock, basically, about the size of a softball. And we had to demolish those, but the project also had a big demand for aggregate, rock, gravel roads, the aggregate that goes under the new structures. So when you think about it, we're demolishing rock and hauling it off and then buying rock to bring it in. That doesn't make any sense, and it's not a sustainable approach. So instead, we brought in this rock crusher. It's quite a device, and took those mountains of rock that we pulled out of your trickling filters and turned it into gravel, turned it into aggregate, and had a beneficial reuse for some of that demolition material. And that contributed to a big part of some of the savings we're able to see on the project. The next photo is the UV disinfection modules where we had lunch, and just what Eric alluded to is it eliminated the use of gaseous chlorine at the treatment plant. Gaseous chlorine works great to disinfect wastewater. It's also very, very dangerous, very toxic. And so getting it out of there is a huge benefit, not just to the safety of your employees, but also to the safety of your community. And so that's a big benefit. Not only that, but the cost to operate the gaseous chlorine system over the life of it is less than handling the cost of the UV disinfection over its lifetime is much less than the cost of handling gaseous chlorine. So you'll see a long-term benefit there too. Lower energy consumption. I haven't gotten the very latest data from Jason and his folks, but when we last talked, they were looking at about a 20% or so lower operating cost, lower energy cost at this plant than you were seeing at your original plant. So if you think of that, you're getting a dramatically cleaner water, dramatically improved environment, much safer plant, and 20% less energy cost to get all that. A lot of that has to do with the new technologies that got implemented, higher efficiency motors, simplification of the process. There was a lot of repumping that was going on in the original plant. But that kind of savings you'll see every day, day in and day out. And then the last, of course, is it expanded your water reuse capacity, not just the 750,000 gallons of additional holding at the golf course, but the ability to treat the water to a higher reuse standard. So the water that you're reusing out in public areas that you're giving to contractors is higher quality and it's safer for everybody. The last piece to maybe touch on while this slide is up is to remind ourselves that what you've named this facility is it's a resource reclamation facility, right? Used to call them wastewater plants, used to call them sewer plants, but I think just the name of it alone is a nice statement. especially in an area of Kansas where water is a resource and water can be scarce. Not for the past 2 years, but generally it's the dry area. And so having that recognition that you're doing the right thing, you're recovering the water, you're not just putting it back to the environment cleaner than it started, but you're making it available for all sorts of beneficial uses. It makes this whole project a green solution. I'm going to go on and talk about some construction highlights, but I really have to attribute this to CAS Construction, our partners, Travis, Jeff Pearsall, the superintendent, who, if you guys who met Jeff, he's a pretty impressive guy. He did a great job and was a main driver in making sure this project got done on budget and on schedule. But let's note that safety is always a priority for us. We can't get work if we're not safe, and the more safe we are, the better we can be. So 325 safety orientations, that's people coming on site, being trained to be safe, and no recordable injuries, no lost time incidents for over a 2-year period of activity on the site. That's a big, big deal, especially when you've got your own staff trying to operate their plant while we're running around them, digging holes and connecting wires and doing all sorts of fun things. I'm going to hit schedule before I talk about teamwork. But of course, the schedule, 59 days ahead of schedule, with what I would describe as probably more than just adverse weather conditions. 68 inches of rain during the project. I don't have to tell any of you about the amount of rain we got. Snow, typical snow, lots of fun cold temperatures. But because of this teamwork issue, I think that plays a big role in the fact that we were almost 2 months early. So let's talk about teamwork. I mentioned this over lunch. So Travis and I and folks at Burns & McDonnell and folks at CIS have worked for years. I've worked with them for 20 years, 30-some projects. We know how to do a job right and make it work well, but it can't work well if the other member of the team, the client's rep, if they're not engaged, if they don't do their job well, it makes the project difficult. These kind of numbers are really a testament not so much to us, because we were just doing our jobs, but the testament of the city and the folks that worked on the team and HDR that really made sure that the project went well. We had a number of very late night tie-ins, interconnections, shutdowns, startups, where we did a lot of planning with Jason and his folks and Jeff, and they made sure that things worked that said they would work, that things would happen when they happened, and without their help, we could not have been as successful at bringing this project to you as we were. So I just want to send another thanks out for multiple people who helped make this successful. So again, thanks to everybody involved, some of the folks in here, and HDR and Jeff and Travis and all those folks. So thank you again, and if you have any questions, we'll be here now and after.
Shouldn't that read water reclamation?
It should.
It should.
Yes.
Commissioners, any questions? Go ahead.
I was going to ask a question, Mr. Christopher. You made the comment that during this project there was no changes. Do you mean no changes to design or no change orders?
No change orders.
There was no change orders on a $30 million project.
In fact, it was under budget by $400,000.
That is, I mean, that's a bragging point in itself. I've been around a lot of construction projects over the years, and you know, it's oftentimes you know, change orders is just kind of a way of life, and that really caught my attention when you said that, and I thought that's amazing, considering, you know, we had the weather, you know, and then you know, all the concrete work that went in out there as well.
Change orders would include any kind of claims or delays or any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's a testament to everybody.
And then, if I may make a couple comments. One is Jeff pointed out the name of that facility, and I was just, you know, talking about that earlier today, where, you know, over the years we always called them sewer plants, wastewater treatment, and so forth. After touring that today, and I hope a lot of people in our community at some point get to see that and see all the reuse and the recycling and reclamation that goes on there, because that in itself kind of ties into our whole, I guess you could say, mission that we've had in this community for 20-some years now, as far as our water conservation efforts and so forth. And so that's pretty amazing in itself. The other thing is, some of us just returned from a water conservation conference, and one of the things that's being stressed nowadays in water conservation. Obviously, you're saving water, reusing it, reclaiming it whatsoever, and that type of thing. But they also talk about energy savings. And so several of the presentations that I went to were kind of directed at communities that have their own water, electrical utility, because sometimes when you're saving water, you're cutting down on the amount of energy that you're using to treat it, et cetera. So this is a very significant project in those areas, and obviously I'm sure the other commissioners are going to join me, in commending on everything on this project, the completed project, the time spent, and the savings. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Millick.
KDHE issued a certificate for September. How long is that valid for? Pardon me?
It's 2 years at this point, but those are typically, pretty standard renewable permits, provided you're meeting all your limits. There will be the day that comes that we, like I said earlier, that we anticipate the limits will get tighter, because that's the way of the industry and the way of water quality. But we really believe you're supremely positioned to take that on when it comes.
We do have assurances from KDHE that they won't ratchet down the requirements in excess of what the plant can perform during the life of the state revolving loan
Yeah,
fund.
yeah,
So we're okay as long as we're paying that money back.
which is 20
for-
years.
I was going to say, thank you, 20 years.
Okay. You'd be 87. Okay.
Tell me about it at the home.
I guess it will too. I guess I will too.
I told somebody earlier today that, it's certainly you've gotten 70 years out of the first part of this plant that was built in the 50s, and
Right.
all you need to do is get 30 years out of this, and you'll be celebrating your 100-year anniversary at this plant. So, so either you go, 97 maybe. I'll be with you. I mean,
Well, and that's good to know that, because we have fought with those regulations for years to meet those regulations, and now we can kind of sit back and, enjoy that we don't have to worry about that from certificate to certificate. But yes, I was very impressed with the whole plant and how you kept it running while you were building. Nobody in the city of Hayes knew that you were doing it, so kudos to everybody that was involved.
Commissioner Jacobs.
I didn't know if Mayor Schwaller was setting my timeline of my life today, but he told me this was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime for me and for him as well.
And for
So,
Commissioner Musil.
and Commissioner Musel, the boy of the group.
Young pup.
That's really a big thing. I mean, that's really a big thing when you think of it that way. And I appreciated the way Mayor Schwaller said that today, because it is a once-in-a-lifetime. But I think the most amazing, two things. No change orders is unbelievable on a project this size with that length of time. It's like you're telling a story. Pretty soon somebody's going to say, oh, there's one or two, but there was none, and that's really impressive. We know how good our staff is here. We know what a great job they do. What they've done with all of you and you with them, this collaborative effort has been something to really enjoy watching and seeing how well everybody worked together. And I'm extremely proud of all of you for that, because it certainly doesn't always work that way in a project this size. So extremely proud of you all, and thank you all very much for that.
Just a few items, kudos. I mean, exactly what you said is kind of what I was going to say. One thing I had on my tour today is you kept saying how well KDHE worked with you guys. It was one of the easiest, or other states you say are not that easy. So to me, that's impressive. We had representatives there, and I know some of those gentlemen, and it's just impressive that the people in our community that we work with. And Jason, you were on our tour, and I mean, just the passion he shows on, he loves what he does, and Jeff, I mean, you guys, it's just impressive, and this is probably the biggest project I'll ever be on with the city, and to see how we did a project like this, got it done in time, save money. I mean, that's our city in a nutshell.
Right. It was a pretty immense occasion, and as I was reflecting on it earlier today, this is a facility that was relocated in the 1950s because of flooding. The prior plant was underwater. Doesn't work well that way. And had one major update in the 1990s. Yet we knew by 2000 and that was one of the first things they had to grapple with on the commission. This facility was done. That was difficult. This, as everyone's pointed out, it finished early, under budget, and it exceeds performance expectations. And that doesn't happen every day, but it happens with good leadership. And we have the right leadership team in place, hired the right leadership team, but it all started here. Because if this had failed, he would have lost his job. But he set this up for success. Oh, I'm sorry, did we tell you that? Oh, no, Argyle boy over here. City manager made sure from the beginning, he designed the process to do this design build. We've never done it before. But observing how projects had gone awry in the past, from the pool, sports complex, and others, he realized this was the best way to do it. That's why there were no change orders. That's why it went so smoothly. So, well, I appreciate the work of everyone. This is the person that had to take full responsibility for it, and the buck stopped with him. Treatment performance, as I said, is amazing, and this will indeed last a lifetime. Thank you, everyone. Now we get from one source of water to another, flooding. This is information on the Ellis County floodplain remapping project.
That was great. I'm not sure I can top that, but.
Oh, you will.
So,
People wanna
Jesse
know.
Rohr, Director of Public Works, and I'm here to provide you an update on a project that's been going on for quite some time now. We've talked about it several months ago, but I want to give you kind of an update of where we're at currently. So in February of 2018, the Kansas Department of Ag Division of Water Resources and FEMA actually began the floodplain remapping project for all of Ellis County, which will, when completed, provide an update to the most current, however outdated, 1986 maps. These new maps will use brand new technology that probably wasn't even thought of in 1986, including LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging. It's a type of service that uses radar and light detection to establish ground elevations. There's been lots and lots of data sharing to this point, including storm data from the past 2 seasons. We've been, however you want to look at it, fortunate and maybe unfortunate to have the rains we've had the last 2 years. However, it has helped provide some much needed data to the team working on the remapping project. To this point, there's been a lot of review by city and county staff, as well as engineers, Division of Water Resources, FEMA, Fort Hays State University, and others. Now we're getting ready to kick off the public review portion and comment portion of the project. So this would be an image from our current Ellis County GIS site. This is an image of the current floodplain, which was actually done by the GIS staff. They took our paper maps and digitized them, which made it much more easier for us to use. If we didn't have this, we'd be unfolding the paper maps that are about this big, and there's no imagery behind them. Very tough to use, very tough to scale from, but that's the most current we have from FEMA. So having this tool that they provided for us a few years ago helped immensely. However, we still knew that the accuracy wasn't there that is present today. This map is a representation of the new draft that can be viewed on the project website, which I'll get into in a minute. The various colors of the map, and I do want to mention again, this is in draft form right now, but the colors represent different things. Yellow represents property that was in the floodplain in the past and is proposed to remain in the floodplain. Red coloring are properties that were not in the floodplain previously but are proposed to be in the floodplain. And then the green colors are property that's in the floodplain currently and is proposed to be out of the floodplain with the current maps. And then this map is a representation of the draft map and what it will more likely resemble once complete. The blue and the orange and the purple are different levels of floodplain, and the hatched area is what's considered floodway, or the actual streams and draws within the floodplain. So the maps will be different in a lot of different ways. Besides the LiDAR topography data set that I mentioned earlier, the maps will be based on two-dimensional modeling, or what they call 2D modeling. This is much more accurate, and it actually depicts water flow in areas with limited development. And we were told by FEMA and DWR that the Ellis County mapping project was one of the first all 2D Zone A projects that was done in the entire country. So, whereas we've been, this remapping project for Ellis County has been delayed for several years, and we've been on the list. I think it started with the map modernization program or project in 2005. That 5-year project, I think, is now in year 15, and so I think some benefits to that delay were our ability to use some increased technology. The new maps will be electronic, not paper as they are now. There'll also be lots of interactive tools available, such as being able to click on a parcel and get an accurate grade elevation, base flood elevation, and various measuring tools on any parcel within the county. So, overall, the maps will be interactive. That's what they call the DFIRM, or the Digital Flood Insurance Rate Map. So quickly here, and this is a quick 10-second video or so, but it briefly shows the 2D modeling in action. I'm not even going to pretend to be an expert and knowledgeable on 2D modeling. I'll leave that to the engineers, but this is the type of work that was done in order to run that again here. It goes pretty quick. So the pink being water flow, inundation of certain areas, and they're used to model different elevations of the base flood during the certain rain events. So I mentioned community review. That's been going on for some time now. And public review will kick off actually with a public open house meeting on November 6th, and I'll talk about more of that in just a moment. There's also a project website, which is very important for people to go look at, especially if they're affected by the floodplain. The website contains the draft maps that I showed earlier and other pertinent information such as story maps, timelines, meeting presentations, and technical reports. Due process requirements for state law and FEMA requirements after the map is completed takes up to 1.5 years. So this includes several layers of quality review. There's a 90-day appeal period. There's a 6-month period for communities to adopt the new maps and update our floodplain ordinances if necessary at that time. That being said, we're looking at an effective date likely sometime in 2021 at the earliest. And I do want to quickly jump to the website, just show people what they can expect if they do go out there and look at this. So if you click on the link, and there's a link from our City Hayes webpage where you can find this as well. So you can zoom in to the city, and like I said, this is countywide, so this also includes the City of Ellis, City of Victoria, Ascension, and all unincorporated areas. There's various layers you can turn on and off. The current layer that's on shows the changes, the yellow, red, and green that I mentioned. There's also a layer that will more accurately represent the flood maps. Currently there's some, during the comment phase, which is actually still going on, there were, you can highlight boxes, you can make comments. That layer can be turned on and off. And over here on the right, you can also back that up with the satellite imagery as well. So our new maps will have all these capabilities to turn these various layers on and off. Cross sections, base flood elevation lines as well. So lots and lots of data here, and like I said, we found it useful so far, and that is available to the general public. So I mentioned the open house that happens on November 6th. That is from 2 to 7 at Sternberg Museum. Anyone and everyone is invited and encouraged to come. Property owners that are impacted by the floodplain, whether they're currently in the floodplain or remaining, whether they're coming into the floodplain, or even if they're going out of the floodplain, should receive a notification. We're working with a joint effort between City Hayes, Ellis County, Victoria and Ellis on putting that notification out. We just received a list of addresses from DWR this morning, and so we'll be getting the notifications out with a postcard of some type to everyone. It's a come and go meeting. They're welcome. Anyone's welcome to attend. And again, if they can come, there'll be individual laptop stations set up, so anyone can come in, talk about their specific property. There'll be insurance experts on hand to talk about anyone that wants to talk about flood insurance. There's actually going to be an insurance workshop going on for insurance agents or real estate agents, lenders who are interested in that. And like I say, lots of representatives there from FEMA, DWR, the engineering staff that's been working on this mapping, and city and county staff. That, I'd take any questions you might have.
Commissioners?
In the past, when areas were designated as a floodplain, I know that property owners were able to somehow, I don't know what the process was, if they petitioned or something of that nature, and they would be able to take property out of a floodplain. Does this affect that? Or, I mean, once you have this, you've got the mapping done here, can somebody still do that?
Yes, there will still be opportunities. It's what they call LOMA, or Letter of Map Amendment process. Through a property owner can obtain survey data and what they call an elevation survey and elevation certificate, submit that work to FEMA, who then, if it meets the criteria, can remove it from the floodplain. So if it's elevated above base flood elevation, whether that be lowest adjacent grade to the structure, maybe the entire lot, whatever it might be, there's different types available. That will still remain after this. So, if property owners, whether they're currently developed or develop later on in a parcel that is in the floodplain, they'll, again, if they meet the proper criteria, can still go through the process to have that property removed.
In your narrative, you pointed out, that this is also done for insurance rates and so forth. Can you give me some examples of where else this mapping is going to be used?
Well,
I mean, it seems like a significant amount of data, and I was just wondering how you're going to be using that.
So, not only our city ordinances, but state statutes and federal regulations require new properties that are built in the floodplain to be built, in our case, a minimum of 1 foot above base flood elevation. And so, even at the city staff level and county staff level, they'll be able to use these maps to help determine that base flood elevation for new construction. And so, like I said, we use our current GIS data all the time. What we don't have is an accurate representation of base flood elevation or accurate grade elevation. So this mapping project will combine the two, and every pixel on that map will have a representation of what those elevations are. If they still want to officially move it from the floodplain, they'll still have to submit the requirement, the data to FEMA in the application. But just by going to the website, and not just staff, but anyone in the public can have access to this, they'll be able to have that data firsthand.
Very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I should know the answer to this, but I don't. How does this impact existing mortgages on residential properties that, one, were considered in the floodplain and had to have flood insurance, and now may come out, or vice versa?
Well, that's a good question, and that's why the FEMA reps will be at this meeting. To talk about it.
We don't know.
But from what we understand, it will have an impact on properties. So those that might not be in the floodplain currently and are going into the floodplain, if they have a federally backed mortgage currently, their lender most likely will require, and is by law is required to require them to get flood insurance. For those coming, and an interesting note, there's actually a law that requires, from what we're told by FEMA, lenders to notify those property owners that they have to get flood insurance. However, on the flip side, if a property owner is coming out of the floodplain, there is no requirement for them to notify the property owner that they're not.
That's that way.
That's why, like I said, we're inviting everyone in this meeting. Everyone will get notice, even those that are coming out, because we want to give them the opportunity and express to them that at least to the draft map now, what's proposed, that some of them will be coming out. And when that happens, if the map is adopted as draft and they do actually come out of the floodplain, they can drop their flood insurance if they wish. So,
I hope we make that very, very clear in everything we talk about.
right, we sure intend to do that.
Thank you.
So Jesse, who makes the final decision of the floodplain? because I had somebody ask me today if they read that you're the one who makes that final decision. I told him I would ask, so. But I mean, does FEMA, are they the ones? Yeah, okay.
On behalf
More
of
powerful than I
the
thought.
Army Corps of Engineers, here's our spokesman.
Made him blush.
I said I would ask, so.
Right,
Powerful
yeah,
Jesse
FEMA
rule.
will make that final determination.
Okay.
That's why they give us this comment period, the public, not just the, what they call a community comment period, which is city and county staff, but also the public comment period. And like I say, we've been pushing this out there. And I do want to note too, that even though the final map might not be adopted till 2021, once it reaches a certain stage in the project, they do allow us to start using the maps for, for building. So we've already seen some benefits to the map. On the flip side, we've seen a couple property owners who will be coming in, and we've had them reach out to FEMA and DWR as well, and start some of that work ahead of time. So.
Bye, Stan, thanks.
Any other questions for Jesse?
Well, I was going to ask another one if I could.
$5.
Pay him, would you? Years ago, in fact, it was probably about 1990, the Army Corps of Engineers had a couple people out here in Hayes that for, I think, 11 or 12 years, they were studying our flood control and looking at, some solutions to, preventing flooding in Hayes, whether it be a channel that, went out west of Hayes and then connected with Big Creek. And they came before the city commission to give a report and basically said that the project was being abandoned, that they didn't really have a solution. And we had gotten a memo, actually, and then they said, if you'd like us to come and explain this. And so 5 people on the commission, 5 people indicated they wanted to come, and they just said they really couldn't come up with a cost-effective way of doing it, if I recall. Does this add any weight to, pursuing any kind of future flood control? Or does it help you make decisions with, like creating more catchment areas or anything like that?
Well,
I guess that was my second part of my question before, and I was asking how we're going to use this data. So it seems like quite a study there, and I was just looking at some of the potential uses
Isn't a
for it.
study already underway looking at Lincoln Draw again?
right, so we have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 205 study going on right now, which is doing that exact thing. They're looking at the water that comes down through the middle of town, through the Van Dorn Draw area and areas farther north, and looking at ways to potentially reduce the water, not the volume, but the rate at which that water comes down through downtown. As you mentioned, there were a lot of other options presented in the past, rerouting water around Hayes, and none of those were even close to being economically feasible. And so this project is currently ongoing. I believe the Corps intends on coming here late January or February to actually provide an update on that project. And we've connected the engineers and DWR working on this remapping project with the Corps as well. And so they've used some cross data. The Corps had come in and taken a lot of data for their project. So that same data was provided to the remapping team doing this project as well. So not only to share the data, but also cross-check each other with the data that was being provided and used.
Excellent. Good question. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Inquiries and comments. Mr. Rubb, do you have anything this evening?
Thank you.
Mr. Burden?
Nothing.
Doherty?
I do have one quick comment, back to the water reclamation project. I appreciate your comments, but the reality is an easy way to get ahead is to hire good people and get the heck out of the way. So going back to the very start of this process, having HDR on board was critical to us. HDR came on, and we were trying to figure out what type of a facility we wanted to build, and helped us evaluate the options and develop cost options, and then helped us figure out what type of a design-build process we needed to have. And we had a couple hiccups during the design-build procurement process. HDR helped us through that. When the Burns and Mac Cast team came on, they came on at the right moment. They took the ball and they ran with it. And through Travis's leadership and Jeff's leadership and that joint ventures team, it's just amazing what they did to make the project work. But at the staff level, Jeff and I know Jason left, but Jeff and Jason are the one that made this roll at the operational level, along with Eric, who was there every day, who was our eyes and ears with the engineering expertise that we don't have. So, while I would like to take some credit for it, they're the ones that did all the heavy lifting.
Eric, this is where you come for the letter of recommendation.
That was all I had.
Excellent. We appreciate the work of everyone. It's going to be cold tonight. Make sure everyone's home safe. Tomorrow, hope to see you at Oktoberfest. I'll be tapping the keg at 10:30. Please come see me. That'll be great. And I look forward to seeing you at the homecoming parade on Saturday. And it's going to be big. All kidding aside, these are two incredibly important projects that just happen to be on the agenda at the same time, both wastewater and flooding. And these are problems that, again, they're tied together and they've vexed our city since it was created. So the more questions we ask, the better. And I enjoy serving with my colleagues, every one of them. Commissioner.
Nothing.
I was going to say the same thing Mayor Schwaller did when this agenda came out today, the other day, real short. Got two little items down here. Two little items are the biggest things that I've seen or been any part of since I joined the commission. And I just couldn't be prouder to serve with this group of people and have the staff that we do, because this has been an amazing experience. Thank you.
Happy Oktoberfest.
You've all heard the statement that Ginger Rogers could do everything that Fred Astaire could do, only she did it in high heels and did it backwards. Well, in my tour group today, the assistant to the city manager, Andrea Winholz, was in high heels. And what a trooper. She did that whole tour. And what do you see out there? Gridded stairs and gridded floors and so forth, and then, rocky surfaces and all that. So pretty impressive seeing her go through there while all us old guys were tripping and falling all over the place. Happy Oktoberfest.
I'd like to call an executive session for a period not to exceed 45 minutes for the purpose of attorney-client privilege and potential property acquisition, to include the city commission, city manager, both city attorneys, director of Grow Hayes, and the city project engineer.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?